Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations. Really? The Bible says that Noah drank the wine and became drunk. So, was Noah a man who walked with God, or was he a drunken sloth? Was getting drunk a character flaw or an accident? We'll answer that question in just 5 minutes, so hang on. We know that Noah became a drunk because the Bible tells us so. Genesis 9 verses 20 and 21 tell us that Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunken. So Noah got drunk. However, I submit that Noah was the first drunk on planet Earth. Why would I make such an outlandish statement? Because the scientific clues compel me to do so. What are these clues, you ask? So our first clue is the fermentation equation. Let's look at the fermentation equation. First you take sugar. Then you add yeast. Next you subtract. Notice this is a subtraction sign, which means you have to take away oxygen. Then you will get carbon dioxide and the alcohol ethanol. In today's atmosphere, a fermentation stops with increased oxygen concentration or increased oxygen pressure. If my hypothesis is correct, that Noah was the first drunk on the planet, then there must have been more oxygen and more pressure in the atmosphere in the past before the flood. So what did the atmosphere look like before the flood? Was there more oxygen than today's 21% oxygen? The answer to this is found in air bubbles trapped in amber. We have found amber all over the planet. Some of these have large air bubbles, trapping past atmospheres in these bubbles. Researchers at Harvard measured the oxygen content of these amber bubbles at 24% in the past. Using other non-amber methods and going back further in time, the United States Geological Survey found 25.8% oxygen in the chevron halite in Tibet. Going back to the amber bubbles, researchers publishing in the American Association for the Advancement of Science, sampling even older amber bubbles, measured 30% oxygen. So far, the results of these oldest amber air bubbles were reported in geology.com. It quotes the United States Geological Survey as saying there was 35% oxygen in these oldest amber bubbles. That's 50% increase over the oxygen quantity in the atmosphere today. Quoting a Washington Post report on the U.S. Geological Survey, they quote them as saying, "This USGS tested this air found trapped in amber in east central Minnesota. They found that the proportion of oxygen in the atmosphere fell from a high of 35% to a low of 28% within a relatively short period. The National Institutes of Health says that, and I quote, excessive amounts of oxygen can stop the fermentation," unquote. Even the Applied Microbiology Biotechnology Journal says, and I quote, "This additional oxygen in the atmosphere in the past was enough to stop fermentation," end quote. So the conclusion is, since there was increased oxygen in the atmosphere before the flood, fermentation could not have taken place. To compound this is the fact that the atmospheric pressure was greater before the flood. Again, the United States Geological Survey says, and I quote, "We found some of the bubbles to have excess pressure, 10 times the atmospheric pressure we find today," close quote. 10 times the pressure? NASA reports that our sister planet, Venus, has an atmospheric pressure measured to be 90 times that of our atmospheric pressure. So yes, it is possible that the Earth's atmosphere in the past could have been 10 times greater than what it is today. So both increased oxygen pressure and quantity were present before the flood, and fermentation as we know it today could not have taken place. Was getting drunk a character flaw or an accident? You be the judge. The best science I've found to describe how and why the atmosphere changed its oxygen content is contained in the book In the Beginning, Compelling Evidence for Creation and the Flood by Dr. Walt Brown. You can get a free online PDF copy of this book at hpt.rsr.org or hydroplate.org.